Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be a long one, a very rambly one, so settle in, get a snack. Just know, I don't know if you know, for those of you that don't follow me on Instagram or my regular blog, you should, but if you just follow me on YouTube, I announced my pregnancy just this past week, and I am close to just about 4.5 months. And so, surprise, I had put the picture up, and some people were kind of like, I knew, or something, and I was like, did you? Did you really? Because it was a shock to, like, all my friends. Nobody knew. They're like, you hit it really well. So, I just announced that, and I thought I would do this video. It's going to be a bit more of a personal video. It's going to be a very emotional video for me as well, so bear with me. I don't have any tissues here, but if we start crying, we start crying. So I wanted to share my pregnancy journey. I talked a little bit about on Insta stories how I'll be sharing this, and I was like, you know, everyone has a journey. That journey could be, it took you the first time to get pregnant, or it took you 8 years to get pregnant. Like, everybody has a journey, and everyone's journey is special to them. So I thought I would share with you mine. I think it will surprise you, kind of the things that have transpired, because I said in my Insta stories, this video will be a really good, it will be a really good lesson to how social media is simply the highlight reel of people's lives. And, you know, for whatever reason, some people feel comfortable sharing things and some people don't, and that's their right. So I don't look at social media and see people's social media and think that's the full story. I never have. I never looked at bloggers, friends, etc. and thought to myself, it's just what's in that picture. Their entire life is summed up in that picture. Like, there is so much that I guess that comes, like I said in my Insta stories, it comes from maybe age, experience. It comes from meeting people over the years that have shocked me with their stories, or have shocked me with things that have happened to them, or had things happening to them and then came out with it later and you just were like, I had no idea. And this is like non-social media world. We're talking like work, friends, family. So this will be a really good reminder that social media is just a highlight reel, because as this all was happening, I didn't share it. And I don't always feel like, maybe some people don't want to share it. I knew I was going to share it at a point, but at the time, I wasn't ready. And I did keep, you know, posting with my blog and posting to social media. And some people may be like, how can you keep, you know, when you're going through something so devastating, how can you keep posting about things that are so frivolous, perhaps? And for me, I've always said that, you know, I started this blog as kind of a creative outlet. And that's what it's always been. It's been this wonderful escape and release from the heavier things in life, the more serious things, the more challenging things. And it's fun to be able to kind of talk about a lipstick sometimes. It can be therapeutic, and it's nice to have it as an escape and release. So let's start at the beginning. When did we decide to start thinking about getting pregnant? We had an apartment that was big enough if we were to have a baby in New York, but I knew that we were probably going to start trying when we were going to leave New York. So we made the decision and officially left New York last March. And, you know, we definitely waited a little bit longer, and there was just tons of different reasons that I'm not going to go into, but tons of personal reasons of why we waited. And I'm never one that, I'm never affected too much by, like, pressure. So, like, family pressure, societal pressure, friend pressure, whatever. Like, I was not the girl in high school that ever suffered from peer pressure. I had just a very strong sense of self, and I knew what worked for me, and I was comfortable being like, nope, I will do it when I'm ready. I mean, I definitely think it's important to bend and to be compromising in certain situations, but there's a lot of times where it's okay to put yourself first, stand up for yourself, and do what works for you, because ultimately you're a much better person for those in your life if you're doing what's healthy for you, what you can handle at the time. So we began thinking about starting, we left in March, so we began trying like right around there. And I really didn't, I wasn't that serious about it yet. I wasn't tracking anything. I wasn't, charting things. And so because I was just like, all right, let's just see what happens. So by about May, I was like, all right, it's been 2 or 3 months. What should we, one of the symptoms of pregnancy that I have is congestion that comes out of nowhere. So if you see me like sniffing the whole time, my congestion just hit right before this video. So here I am, completely congested and can't hear a thing. So I'm going to be sniffing the whole time. So we thought about, so I was like about 2 months in, and I was kind of like, all right, maybe I should like put some thought behind this. So I downloaded like an app that someone suggested, the Ovia app, OVIA, and I'll link that below so you just can have a suggestion of what I use, what I talked about. And that helped me kind of narrow down like your fertile window and track your cycle, and it helps track other things. So I was starting to become a little more strategic about it. And then that was by like May. I was like, all right, let me just put maybe what I'm doing isn't working. Because when I went back and looked at my dates, I was like, I was way off. So by May, I downloaded the app and I was like, all right, let me just start tracking some stuff. In June, my dad was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer that had spread to the liver. It was a complete surprise. We were living with them at the time. As I said, we moved out of New York to build a home with my parents so that we could all live together. We're living in the home now, actually. So it was going to take some time for the home to be built, and our lease was up, which is why we moved into a temporary residence with my parents. It was out of the blue. We all did not see this coming. So that threw a huge wrench into the plans and situations. I mean, I wasn't frantic about trying to get pregnant until that day. It was June 16th. And they told Stan and I we had been out of town. We came home and they told us. And I remember sitting in front of my father's feet at his chair. He was sitting in a chair. I was sitting at his feet. And I remember just saying, nothing can happen to you. You have to be here to meet my children. Like, that was our whole plan. Like, to have my kids see you guys every day and have you guys be a part of their life, and just, that was the whole plan. Like, you have to be here. Like, you have to stay alive for this. And so it was a very emotional moment. We were all crying, and my dad and I were sobbing together, and it was just so that, it took on like a life of its own, unfortunately. Like, then I went from just kind of being casual about it to like having this franticness of like wanting to get pregnant. And even, I remember just a few weeks later, we were meeting with his oncologist to determine, to get the full diagnosis, his prognosis, and what this all would mean. And it wasn't good. It was very advanced, and my father was 79. And I remember sitting in the oncologist's office, and I lost it. I was screaming and crying, like, you have to keep him alive for me to have a baby. You have to keep him alive to have a baby. You can't, like, this is our dream. Like, he has to be here. And it was really hard. It was a really difficult time. Like, my mom was crying, my dad was crying, the oncologist was like frozen. So it kind of took on a life of its own at that point. And I remember, like, after I found out my dad got sick, I remember that I was like, and I know you can't get pregnant like you can run a race, meaning like I'm going to beat my time, or I'm going to get in shape, or, like a goal that you're going to meet. But I thought about it almost like that. I was like, I'm going to get pregnant. I am going to do this. Like, I can do this. I've done a lot in my life. I am a hard worker, like that means anything. I'm going to get pregnant. So surprisingly, in July, we got pregnant. And I found out the first like week of August. So there's a lot surrounding that. So let me kind of go into that. I found out like Thursday, it was like August 5th or 6th. Like I was, you know, like when you start to track it like I did, I know many of you who were maybe are trying or whatnot, you know what I mean? Like, you know, like 3 days to my period, 2 days to my period, 1 day to my period. Like I was all of a sudden that woman. And so I knew it was coming up and I was tracking it every day. Unfortunately, from the time that my father was diagnosed, he lived only a little over 2 months. So it was June 16th that we knew. He was diagnosed the 15th. We knew the 16th, and he passed in late August. So at this point, by the time I found out I was pregnant, things were bad. He actually was in the hospital at the time. He had collapsed at home, and he was in ICU. And we knew that that hospital visit was like, it was the beginning of the end. And so that week that he was in the hospital, you know, I would go back and forth, and my mom was pretty much staying there. She'd stay there all day, all night, and I would kind of shuttle back and forth, bringing her things or relieving her so she could go home and take a shower or whatever we needed to do. And I was driving home one night and that week, and like a voice came into my head, and it was just like, you're going to get pregnant. It's going to happen. This is like right now. This is like, you're going to find out in a few days, and it's going to help the family get through Dad's death. And I just knew. And I remember saying to Stan the next night, like, I'm pregnant. And he was like, you took a test? And I was like, no, but I know. It's just a feeling that I have. So the next day was Thursday, and no one was home. My mom was at the hospital. Stan was on his way to work. My dad was in the hospital, and I took a test. And I waited, and I was kind of like, oh, nothing's showing up. Maybe I was wrong. And then like a minute later, it was there, and I was pregnant. And I called Stan and told him, and he was like, you were right. Like, oh my gosh. And I was like, yeah. It was a very unique moment, because while you're so happy, it was like this crushing grief that came with it, knowing that like with this, like, you know, my dad's not going to be here for this. And it had so many emotions. So I went to the hospital, you know, to see them. And it was the day that I found out was a Thursday. And Wednesday, he had made the decision to come home for hospice. He had, his body he was so sick. And he just said, I can't do it anymore. It's just, he was going through so much. And so he had told my mom that he wanted to just come home and die. So we brought him home. So I found out like the next day. So it was this like whirlwind of emotions, and I told him, and you know, we're Catholic, and my dad's like very Catholic though. And he's, you know, quite religious. He got more religious in his older years. And I remember him saying like, when one life leaves, another one comes. And it was just this very emotional moment at the hospital when I told him. So he lived for a few more weeks and then passed in late August. And it was a lot, obviously. I was trying to like obviously not have anything happen to me, and we were going through, it was very traumatic. Those last few weeks were very, very traumatic. The night that he passed was very, very, very traumatic, but very just, it haunts me to this day, his final moments. And just, you know, the constant, like, you know, is it happening today? Is it happening today? Because we knew he was getting sicker and sicker, and it was just a lot of, it was just awful. It was a nightmare. So he passed in the end of August, and then we were finalizing everything to move. We were moving 2 weeks. We were like, you know, unsure if he was going to make it to the closing of the house, and he didn't. He never got to see the final house, the final build. So 2 weeks after he passed, we had to move into our new home, and I didn't bother going to a doctor down there because I was so early still, and I was like, I'm not going to be, you know, staying with this doctor, so I might as well see someone when I go to wherever we're moving to. I'll start there. So we moved in on Wednesday, and then Monday was my first appointment with the my first, you know, pregnancy appointment, whatever. So Stan and I went, and we're going, you know, through the first ultrasound and whatnot, and the doctor's like, she's looking, and she's staring at the screen, and she's staring at the screen, and she's staring at the screen, and she's looking and looking and looking and looking, and I just, nothing was moving on the screen. And I mean, I've seen enough television shows to know that like something should be moving, indicating a heartbeat, and then she just said, you know, I'm sorry, there's no heartbeat. And it just was, I don't know, we weren't anticipating it. I don't know. I don't think anybody does. But it was like this like moment where like everything stopped, and like Stan was like sitting there like frozen, and the doctor's like starting to talk to us, and I have no idea what she said. I just remember like, I wasn't crying. I just was staring straight ahead because I was just so numb. And I called my mom from the doctor's office, and she was like, oh my gosh, what happened? Tell me all about it. And I was like, I miscarried. And she was like, just like, she couldn't even believe it. She was stunned and started crying. And so this was like 3 weeks after my dad had passed. So it was like this period of grief that was almost unimaginable. It was so big and so heavy, and we're in this new place and new home, and we don't know anybody and know anything. It was just very, it was just a very difficult time. And so, yeah, that was that. And, you know, I'd heard some people say like, well, right after you miscarry, you can often get pregnant right away. And so I was like, oh, that's going to happen to us. And, you know, it didn't. It took a few months for my HCG, is it HCG or HGC? I always forget, HCG, I think, levels, which the levels that determine that you're pregnant, that show that you're pregnant, to go back to zero. They have to go back to zero, I believe, in order for you to be able, I guess, to get pregnant again. That's what I had read or doctor had said or whatever. That's what I thought. But mine actually took like 2 months to go back. And the only reason I know that is because I kept taking pregnancy tests. It was September, I had the miscarriage, up till November, and it was still showing positive, which was freaking me out because I was like, oh, we did it. It's, you know, we were able to get pregnant again. And then the next day I'd get my period. So I was like, what is going on? So I realized that my levels hadn't gone down, and I miscarried at around 9 weeks. So I was like, obviously I want to try again. And so we were lucky enough to get pregnant in February. And I found out in March, right? Yeah, right? Like trying to like think back. Yeah, February, I believe, was my last menstrual cycle. And so that's that. That's the story and the journey. And you know, when I was going through it, you know, so many people, and I understand why I knew a lot of people that had miscarriages, and they were, you know, very supportive, and they were like, I miscarried, and look at me now. We have, you know, I was able to get pregnant then again, and you know, everyone processes things differently, but for me, it was like, it was really hard to hear because it was like, you know, you've already made it to the other side, and I'm like in the trenches, and I just, while I understood why they said it, and I was so grateful for everyone's support, it was difficult because I was like, what if I never get there? Or like, what if, I'm, you know, like I'm in the trenches right now. I can't see the end result, or I can't see the hope right now. The grief is too much. And especially with this pregnancy, I mean, I was even nervous. I was so anxious the night before I announced it just because I kept it to myself. I mean, just my family knew, because I just was so worried that if something happened, like I'd have to go through telling everybody again, because everybody knew I was pregnant the first time around because my dad was dying, and we just wanted something to hold on to that was happy. You know, he told everybody, and so I was okay with that. But this time around, I was like, I just don't know if I can bear having to like go through it all again. And so very few people knew. And, you know, I was really, you know, something that this is really, you know, it's silly, but nothing that happens, you know, when during pregnancy or miscarriages or any of it is silly. Like your emotions are justified, whatever they are. Whatever your emotions are, they're justified. They can, whatever they are. I was really nervous all I was going through the miscarriage and all that kind of stuff, that like someone was going to out me and be like, oh my gosh, like you look like glowing. Is that a baby bump? Or is that like a, you know, and I know people don't mean to perhaps out somebody on social media. But I mean, for me, even before Instagram and blogs and everything like that, I was just always under the idea that like, just, it's better to let somebody announce it or to have them be like 9 months and you're like, oh, you're pregnant, than to even possibly guess. Because, and this whole situation that I've been through reminded me of why that is, because it's just, you never know someone's journey. Like here I was like pregnant, father was dying, then I had the miscarriage. So like, you know, afterwards, maybe my stomach was still bloated. And if someone said something and you just miscarried, there's so many circumstances surrounding pregnancy that no one ever knows, that I always feel like it's just better to err on the side of like, let's just wait for them to say it. Rather than trying to like push them to say it sooner than they want to. Because sometimes it's a happy time. And for me, it was both. It was happy and it was like awful at the same time. So, I wrote a little about, on my blog, I'll link that post below, like how I've been feeling and everything. You know, I didn't go into pregnancy thinking it was going to be very easy. To be honest, like some people say, like, I wish more women would be honest about how difficult pregnancy is. And I'm like, I mean, I walked into this feeling like it's going to be tough, like super. So I didn't walk into it thinking I was going to be like in a goddess gown in a field of flowers with a flower crown on my head the whole time. Like I was like, it's going to be rough. And it's, you know, it's definitely, it's not easy. Pregnancy is not easy. And I, you know, had so many friends that were always so open with me. And, you know, I had a friend years ago and she struggled with infertility and finally got pregnant. And, you know, she taught me a lot about accepting different emotions throughout pregnancy. And like, because during her pregnancy, she just was like, I'm miserable the whole time. And she's like, but I'm also so grateful. And she's like, and I don't feel you have to be one way or the other. She's like, you can every day be like, I'm really excited for when this is over because this is really tough. And it is. But she also was so grateful every single day. And she, you know, taught me a lot. This was years before I even thought about getting pregnant. How it's wonderful, you know, how it's okay to have multiple emotions. You don't have to have one or the other. Because every time we used to get together, I would let her just sit and complain to me. And I never thought for once that her complaining was like, you know, you should feel grateful. I mean, she had tried for like 8 or 9 years. So I would let her just sit and complain. And I thought it was, you know, it was tough, you know, and I really appreciated her being so candid with me because I knew it was all that she wanted was to be a mom. But she was so grateful, but it also it's just not for the faint of heart. It's not easy. But I hope, you know, that sharing my story, I don't know, maybe touch somebody or, I don't know, you know a little bit more about me. I think it's nice to kind of find these things out sometimes, and I'm glad that I could share my story. And I knew I was always going to. I just wanted to feel ready. So now I'm ready. I hope you enjoyed this video, and feel free to, leave a comment or share. And I thank you all again so much for your support all the time. This blog really is just a great community of people I've met, and it's just been, everyone's just always been very supportive, and I'm really grateful for that energy constantly that's been, formed here with surrounding my blog, and it makes me happy. So thank you so much for watching, and I will talk to you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.